condo on my wrist, girl, I'm cashing out. Got a condo around my neck, girl, I'm cashing out. 36 hoes on
Welcome back to another edition of the First and Short podcast with JJ and the Goose. Today we'll be doing our Monday Night Football preview between the Denver Broncos and the San Diego Chargers. Goose, what are your initial thoughts on this matchup?
Well, just looking at the teams and the division as a whole, this seems to be a pretty big matchup for both teams. They're the top two in the AFC West. The Chiefs and the Raiders don't look like they're doing anything this season. So it'll be between these two teams, most likely the Chargers and the Broncos, to decide who goes to the playoffs. And looking at these teams, I don't think either one's good enough to get a wild card. So whoever wins tonight gets the first leg up in their race to the division crown and a playoff berth. Peyton Manning historically has not done particularly well against the San Diego Chargers. It's always been a defense that's given him trouble. In fact, he once had a game where he threw 3 interceptions against San Diego. So with his comeback tour being fairly successful, I'm interested to see what he'll do against this defense. Phillip Rivers and the Chargers doing what Phillip Rivers and the Chargers do. They're a very talented team, play well, and find ways to lose games like they did last week against the New Orleans Saints. I don't know if I can really trust either one of these teams. I don't even know, So it's really a situation of which team do I think will withstand the others, incompetence, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and it's interesting because if you had told me at the beginning of the season the Broncos with that defense would go out and they'd get Peyton Manning, and if you told me through 5 games they'd only be 2-3, I'd be very surprised by that. The Chargers are 3-2. They've done what it takes to win some games. They gave New Orleans their first win of the year last week in prime time. But here's something that I find interesting. So Rivers has gotten a lot of crap that he can't win the big game and things like that, and he can put up fantasy numbers sometimes. But he's thrown 8 touchdowns and thrown 5 picks. It's got to be something that's alarming to you, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. A couple years ago, when you were listing out your quarterbacks, Phillip Rivers was pretty regularly in that 4-3 spot behind Peyton, Brady, and Breeze. And the last 2 years, there's been a noticeable drop in his play and the team winning. I mean, they've always been inconsistent, but the Chargers always came on late in the season and got in the playoffs. And I think we're consistently a team that you didn't want to see in the playoffs. But, they've had receivers that have aged out and left. They've had Gates, who's now even older. They don't have the running game of an LT anymore. So I don't know that it's so much Phillip Rivers' play deteriorating or that the pieces around him are getting worse. And Norv Turner, I think, is just an awful head coach. It defies reason to me that this is the same franchise that fired their head coach after a 14-2 season, but somehow Norv Turner has missed the playoffs the last 2 seasons with Phillip Rivers as his quarterback in a bad division, and he still has his job. And so I wonder if it's not more the organization and the flaws in the organization, or is it that Phillip Rivers is taking noticeable steps back?
No, and you're right, and it seems like Rivers' numbers have decreased since LT's departure, and that would certainly make sense. They're looking for a stable running back situation. You've got Ryan Matthews and Jackie Battle pretty much splitting the carries right now. Actually, on the year, they're 36 apiece. But they're actually getting production out of the run game. Matthews getting 5.1 yards a carry to Battle's 4.8. That's pretty good. That's enough to get it done on the ground, I would say, for that team. But we're still struggling to get consistency out of the receiver spot on that team. Malcolm Floyd's got 20 catches. He's only got 1 touchdown through 5 games, which is interesting. And then Robert Meacham, who they brought over from the Saints, I think they were expecting to get more out of him.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I like Ryan Matthews. I think he's a really good back. I don't know that he's no one's an LT. I don't know that he's going to give them the type of production they're looking for. He kind of reminds me more of like a Reggie Bush type. 15, he's not going to carry the ball 25 to 30 times a game and be very successful in that way. He needs to be somebody who gets the ball in space and edge, kind of like Sean McCoy with the Eagles, where it's not so much we're going to give you the ball up the middle, every time on first down. More find situations where we can get you out in space. And, who's the other running back that they let go to the Saints? Letting LT go, I think, was fine. It was Sproles. That decision not to keep him just really boggles me for what he did for that team on special teams and on offense, creating big plays in select situations. So, I like Phillip Rivers. I think he's getting a lot of undue heat. And this is a Chargers organization that's not very good historically. It's not very good in the recent history. And I think a lot of the success has been Phillip Rivers overcoming the shortcomings of the organization and not, these last 2 years. I think that's really an anomaly. I think he still is an elite quarterback, capable of playing on an elite level. Getting back to the Broncos, they're only 2-3, but they've played a really tough schedule. 2 of their losses are to the Texans and the Falcons, 2 undefeated teams, and their other loss came to the Patriots, who have only lost 2 games on the year. Unfortunately, they went down to the Seahawks, kind of weakens my argument a little bit, but still very tough games. So even though they're 2-3, I think most people will consider that they're better than your average 2-3 team. And Norv Turner, coach team versus Peyton Manning. Long term, I would expect the Broncos to be the favorite to come out in this division. Their offenses seem to get a little better each week. I'm not sold that Peyton Manning quite has the velocity on his passes that he had 2 years ago, but he's completing passes at a high percentage. That Brandon Stokely connection, I find that really is an interesting subplot of that team, that these guys haven't played together in years, but it seems like they've picked up right where they left off. He's finding him all over the place. Really like Thomas and Decker as well. So I think they've got the receiving weapons for Manning. I think the question is going to be, what are they going to get out of the run game with Willis McGahee?
So I believe we've come to the time where we make our picks. We've talked about the quarterbacks on these 2 teams, the coaching matchup. We've got John Fox for the Broncos, and then we've got Norv Turner, who I believe most people will be with you, and it's kind of baffling how he still has a job. So where are you going? Remember, this game is in San Diego.
It is in San Diego. It's a 1-point spread going towards the Chargers. And in despite of Peyton Manning's mixed history of playing the Chargers, I'm going to give the nod to the Broncos.
Well, I like that pick, but I'm going to have to go with Phillip Rivers, NC State alum. I think we can get it done in San Diego at Qualcomm Stadium. No offense to John Fox. I appreciate what you did for my Carolina Panthers. But I like the running game to get it going. We're going to have to get going against these linebackers from Denver, but they should be able to with Matthews and Battle. And so I like the Chargers. There you have it. Goose likes the Broncos. I like the Chargers. This has been your Monday night matchup preview on First and Short. Thanks for listening.